Everyone, thank you so much for joining the Behind Company Lines podcast. Today, we're here with Moah, CEO and co-founder of Boomerang, which is the leader in thoughtful productivity software on different email platforms that empowers people to focus on what matters most. Moah, I'm so excited to chat with you and learn about the long journey you've had at Boomerang. And it's such an exciting process, especially as, now I think more so than ever, companies are ultra fixated on productivity. We're thinking about running lean companies. We're thinking about how to maximize people's not only skill sets, but their productivity in ways that they can impact work day to day. And as founders, it's something we obsess about often. So I'm excited to hear what you're working on and how that's enabling employees and founders to work more efficiently. But before we get into all that, if we were to think back before Boomerang, what were you doing before you started the company?
I was working in user experience design and product management in different startups in Boston. So I graduated from college and then started joining big companies, and I kept going smaller and smaller until we started Boomerang. And I think it was a very clear indicative of how I was going to go is at every company that I worked for, I was always the productivity geek or advocate, looking at new tools, trying out different things, scripts, and kind of sharing with other people in my team and immediate coworkers like, hey, have you seen this new tool that I'm trying out? And that kind of extended out to when we eventually started our own productivity company. So I think it's kind of a natural progression.
Yeah. I always like to talk to founders with a product background because I think as founders, we may have maybe an idea of what we think people and the user experience will be, but oftentimes we get it wrong. And in particular, what have you seen in your background experience where founders or products may not have the ideal user experience, and what do you go to help kind of alleviate or relieve or even support or encourage a better experience when building product?
I think it's a lot about going to the real source, which is the users, and never assuming you're the users. Yeah. And it's especially tricky when you're building a very horizontal tool like we do, right? We are building email, calendar scheduling, meeting scheduling, and everybody kind of felt like they are the users or they could be the users because they're using email every day, right? So when we're designing, when we're talking to our customer, we are writing emails to our marketing emails to our customers, it's very easy to fall into that trap of not actually going to the source, right?
Yeah.
And I think there are a lot of different startup methodology that people talk about. Go talk to the users. Who is going to use it? Who is going to want it? And what we done and this is a very strong company culture for us. From the very beginning, we did things like user field studies because what we wanted to know was how do people actually use email? How do people actually use their meeting scheduling tools? And the way that we did was just follow people around. The first part of our company history, I would actually basically beg people to, hey, can I come when you get to work, like between 8 or 9, come sit with you to see the first part of your day, how you handle your inbox.
Yeah.
That gave us so much insight into like people, when you just like do surveys or something, people say things like, I'm overwhelmed by email or I hate these junk emails and all those things that they talk about.
Yeah.
When you actually go and sit down behind them, the actual problems are not what they say the problems are. And you start to see, okay, like junk emails are, yes, a problem, but you delete them in less than 1 second.
Yeah.
So they don't actually take up that much of your time, right? So I think that's the main advantage that we have because of my UX background as a founder is we always go to the very source of the problem and actually observe the users in their natural habitat and understand this insight about what is the real problem and how we can solve it. Because we usually, as a founders, we tend to start from the solution and try to find the problem.
Yeah.
And true understanding of the user problem actually guides you in every part of the way.
Yeah.
Whether you make product decision, marketing email, customer success demo, all of that come from like who the user is, what they are thinking right now at this moment. What do we want them to know? And that's very UX-based thinking.
Yeah. What was the reception of when you would go visit people and What were those common problems that you would see that they would have going through their inbox? And I'm trying to think about, I'm sure there are things that annoy me in my email, but maybe there's a lot that I'm unaware of that it's taking me longer than I need to accomplish a task. What were you seeing, and how were people receiving it? I mean, having a shadow in the office is so interesting, especially now with everything, I guess, disparate.
Yeah, so it is a little bit harder now, and now it's mostly virtual, like share your whole screen and we'll just kind of observe you. This is pre-COVID that I'm talking about. And people tend to like, the first like few minutes, they were kind of awkward about it. And then they kind of forget you were there because the way that you want to observe, and this is from the UX training, is you try to be as neutral. You don't make reaction. You don't make sound. You try to be a silent shadow, right? And what we found was people were actually, a lot of the time, their problem is getting sidetracked into different things. So you will see, okay, I got an email. It's about something I need to look up somewhere. They go there, then they are in different tab, different thing, different context, another 10, 15 minutes. And then people go from one thing to another. So they don't have this like, I am going to accomplish X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
The setting the intention for the time. So they just kind of like float through their inbox and going off to wherever it takes them. Then the other one is we also found like meeting scheduling usually takes 20 to 30% of the people's time that when they are going through their inbox, because they see, oh, I need to schedule this, pull up their calendar, try to find the time, transcribing or whatever that they do. Then they are off to like, oh, now I see this calendar appointment that I need to reschedule. Then they are off to different stuff, right?
Yeah.
So what we found was this ability to kind of stay focused on tasks, like what you need to do. And then the other part that people get sidetracked is they get email that they can't deal with right now. They need to deal with later. And that's part of why like we know Boomerang was a critical part of the ability to move your email to a future time, was a very critical part of like how to clear through your inbox and get your mental load squared away.
Yeah.
This is the other part that we learn is people get overwhelmed not just because of like number of emails of the digital bits on your screen. It's the mental load. I need to remember about this email in a week.
Yeah.
And they don't have an easy tool that's part of their workflow to deal with it.
Yeah.
So yeah, we were finding like, and then there are times like they will think of something to remind somebody, but it's not the right time yet. So then that's part of like the send later and like making sure, okay, I need to remind this person only if they didn't respond to me by this date.
Yeah.
So those kind of things, again, is mental overhead that weights people down, not actually the actual bits and, you know, what you write there.
Yeah.
So having these tools to offload your mental overhang has been the main way to get productivity, right? So it's the clearing of your what needs to be taken care of, right? And then we also learned when we started to think a little bit more and deeper into the research is energy management more than time management. So when you have the highest amount of energy, focus, and clarity, sometimes people kind of suck into this inbox where it sets your decision. Like, sorry, I'm going to restart.
Yeah.
So one, people have the highest focus and mental clarity in the morning. They get into the inbox and then that kind of steps all their energy away because inbox is a series of decisions to be made. So then by the time they're done with it, they have decision fatigue. They don't have the mental energy to deal with the hard stuff.
Yeah.
So then it kind of get your day completely sidetracked. And then at the end of the day, you're like, I don't know what I got done today. It just feels like I'm doing a lot if it's busy.
Right.
But you didn't get to move the important strategic thing moving forward. And founders, that's the main thing, right? We get so many things demanding our attention. And if we always go from like urgent things that other people demand of us, we don't have enough time and mental energy to deal with the strategic long-term things that we need to drive forward as the founder.
Yeah. Yeah. And thinking about kind of that experience in that process, as a founder, I'm thinking about how do you integrate with so many different technologies and connect them in such a seamless way that it doesn't add another window that you have to go through, which I think everyone's kind of knows about how many windows somebody could go through before they kind of lose attention,
Yes.
right? But I think it's more complicated than that, because going to a window in essence is taking your attention to something else.
Right.
What is the challenge about building technology that integrates with so many different pieces and have an experience that you don't feel that integration? It feels extremely smooth.
Yeah, I think that was partly why we went with the route that we did, is building on top of existing email platforms so that people don't have to go off of their natural workflow. Like, we want to keep people in their natural habitat. They don't have to change. They don't have to implement yet another productivity system. Because when you do that maintaining the productivity system also takes energy. And sometimes the time saving that you get is not really offset by the amount of effort you have to put to keep the system maintained.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's why we've built Boomerang, everything around where are people already spending their time, and can we be part of their workflow as intrusively as possible.
Yeah.
Be just part of, like, you need this right now, here is a button. You need this here, we are giving you here. And I think that's really tough as a founder. It's a strategy that you have to make, thinking we are going to build on top of somebody else's platform. Then you don't have full control of the user experience, right? You have to fit into where they are. And so you're a little bit at the mercy of the platform partner.
Yeah.
But at the same time, retention and people coming back and using it and being part of their daily workflow is a little bit easy, right?
Right.
If you are some other destination, making sure people come back to your site, to your tab, to your app day after day is a struggle.
Yeah.
So for us, retention is we're in their Gmail, we're in their Outlook.
Yeah.
Right? We just need to make sure that they get onboarded, started using it. And then once they start using it and know how to use it, you just become you're just part of their natural day-to-day workflow.
Yeah. And it's thinking about with productivity tools, I feel like it's difficult in terms of the where to make money, essentially where the pricing model comes from, and where essentially how you can offer the maximum amount of features and capability to really kind of have a user sink their teeth in and have it implemented into their process, but avoid, say, the pitfalls of like the freemium model, which I think we all kind of, it's tough because we all enjoy the free features, but once we hit that barrier, it's hard to make a decision. So how did you think about, for your tool, for Boomerang, how did you think about pricing and where did you end up landing? And was it the same the whole time?
It's been the same the whole time. We have raised pricing recently, mainly because of just to keep up with inflation and everything else that's going on.
Sure.
We started out with free trial and freemium on top of each other, right? I think they now have a new name called reverse trial. That's the newfangled name in the startup land for something we've been doing for 12 years, which is you come in, you get all the features as a pro user without credit card, without anything. You just install and you are able to see the full value of the product. And it's a very self-serve. Nobody has to approve you. You just go ahead. You don't need to go do a demo to be able to try it. You install it. 2 minutes later is already ready for you to take full advantage of the full suite of the product.
Yeah.
And we were thinking about in a way that kind of like mainly it's like we want to be part of your user daily workflow. And once you've become like a part of their daily workflow, you don't have to worry about retention. You don't have to worry about proving your value.
Right.
And so we basically decided that let's give them the free trial period with full features. And then they're going to start using it. They're going to get used to living life with Boomerang in their ear, right? And then at some point, we cut them off. Right?
Yeah.
And then they hit the paywall. And even then, if you're like a light user, you don't really need to use. I think we have a lot of like students and people who use it casually in their personal email. And for those people, we want them to be able to use it without a problem.
Yeah.
And then people who are actually getting business value out of it, they will hit the paywall. And even that paywall is very gentle nudges. We don't just like cut you off right away. We say, hey, you already use this much.
Sure.
Do you like to upgrade? And we progressively get a little bit more annoying until they get cut off.
Yeah.
And that has been working really well, mainly because we've been putting ourselves in the user's shoes. And if I am the user, if I try out a productivity product, how would I like to be reminded that I'm getting the value and then be asked to pay? So we have this very empathy. We kind of move through our payment process and pricing and the whole way we ask people to pay with empathy and humor. And that's been kind of like a part of company identity, and people actually love it. And I think it is part of why our conversion rate is pretty good. It doesn't have to be super business and super strict about hey, you need to pay.
Yeah. And thinking about, I guess my curiosity, being that you've done this for so long with Boomerang, how has the product evolved over the years, and what's the traction now, and what are you excited about in terms of the next kind of stage of growth for Boomerang?
Yeah, I think when we first started, right, it was literally 2 buttons in Gmail. One was ability to move the email out and bring it back later. So it's now known as snooze, right?
Yeah.
And then the other one is send later, which is you schedule it, you go it out later, right? And then we kept evolving from mostly customer guidance. People are asking for, hey, you do this, but you don't do this. Can you add this, right? Mm-hmm. And partly because we are users of our own product, and 30 to 40% of our team are former users or customer joining the team.
Yeah.
So we have this very user as the North Star and what they need as a company product roadmap guidance. Mm-hmm. But there are other times where we have tried something because technology was the right time for us to build a solution that people need. So an example would be when we build Respondable, which is an AI assistant tool for getting your email to be more respondable, right? Mm-hmm, so you're sending something, we are analyzing it real time and helping you make it more respondable so that you're more likely to get a response. Mm-hmm. And that part didn't come from customer because we kind of realized that technology was there for us to actually build it and be useful for the customer. So we introduced it and the response was just tremendous.
Yeah.
So there are times where the users are just banging down our door and build this. And then there are times where we found the innovation is there and the users would appreciate it and introduce it.
Yeah.
We have added, and then there are parts where kind of the market and the society kind of got there. So recently, it's probably last 3 to 5 years, people have been starting to talk about the right to disconnect, right? Mm-hmm. It started in Europe, starting to spread to North America. So Canada has started to put in some of the laws as well, where the employees should have the right to disconnect from work during their personal time. Mm-hmm. And we understand that. We understand the cost of interruption it has on people's productivity. So we started building the tools that a company can say, hey, all our employees can actually not have to respond and answer emails in their personal, right?
Yeah.
And there are different companies starting to, even the American companies too, starting to understand and realize that wellness of the employee is a business benefit to them too.
Yeah.
So there are parts where we see the trend and what we need and always guided by our mission of making people more productive. So sometimes things are what user asks. There's parts where technology is the one that's driving it, or kind of the market forces and the way everybody is in terms of thinking about productivity kind of build us out what we need to do next.
Yeah.
So the last frontier for us, for your question, where we are looking to move is, I think we're adding to the meeting scheduling space where so far, all the meeting scheduling tools are either you do all the work, right? Look up all the times, type it into an email, which is manual, is not fun. Or you can send a link to the other person and kind of shift the work of scheduling to the other person and go find the time.
Yeah.
Which kind of signal a little bit like, hey, I don't want to do the work. So here's a link that is convenient to me, but you do the work and find the time, right?
Yeah.
So we thought about what can we do with technology that we have now, where it's still as easy for the sender. You're just sending with 2 clicks. But for the recipient, it's actually so much easier.
Yeah.
So we are actually changing the way people schedule meetings by saying, right in the email, there's a live interactive image of all the times I'm available. So that Julian, you don't have to go click open multiple browsers and find things.
Okay.
And then type in this is Julian and this is Julian email address.
Right.
You don't have to do all that. All you get is an image. You click it. The system knows this is Julian. Everything is booked. It's in both our calendars. And I think this is how meeting scheduling should be going forward.
Yeah.
So that's our next frontier.
I love
changing the way people schedule meetings.
Yeah. It's amazing the intricate, but also such necessary changes you're making. And I love the piece about not only a lot of founders will go to their user and build around that. They go get feedback, go through user experiences and demos, but it's even more impressive. And I think it's a little bit more challenging to see where the innovation is and take a chance on testing something that is going to be, that you feel it would be helpful and being right. I would feel like that's the best part about that experience. I'm always curious, being that there's so many external factors that founders have to manage and handle. What are some of the biggest challenges that you face today?
I think we're adjusting to being remote and adding new people that we haven't met to the team. I think it's not a unique challenge to us.
Sure.
I think every founder is kind of like learning the new way of how do we do this.
Yeah.
The other one is we have always been a profitable company, right? We grow with our own revenue. And I think it's kind of now become more on trend, right? Tech companies with the funding is not as easy anymore. People are starting to see the things the way we do, which is kind of like actually a great thing for us. Like it was actually super challenging to operate a company the way we did, where we care about how much we spend. We have very thoughtful thinking about how to deploy our investment dollars.
Yeah.
And this has been the way we operate all the time. And now everybody is seeing it this way. So I am actually finding it, the current situation and how people have changed their thinking is actually more in line with how we have always been. So I'm like, hey, now I don't have to convince people this is a good way to do business. I don't know.
Yes. What was that? I guess just the thing on that point. What was the where did you come up with that thought? Because a lot of you built Boomerang during the time where funding dollars were pretty available, and everybody was trying to find a new unicorn to invest in, and then companies and leaders were making kind of outrageous growth, kind of whether it's predictions or investment into certain parts of the business. I talking to another founder the other day, and one hard reality about fundraising is that sometimes you don't know what that money is used for. So then when you receive it, you start buying everything. You buy all these tools, hiring all these people, and not necessarily evaluating the impact of each decision. How are you ahead of your time at that point? And I truly mean ahead of your time as being a profitable company nowadays is not only necessary, but it was not common, as most companies were working with debt or limited runway and always having to fundraise. Where did it come from?
I think it was always about like this. We need to kind of control our destiny and having it do it in a sustainable way. Like we do not want chaos in the sense that you're right. Like founders would raise money and then the expectation is you're going to spend it in the next 24 months. If you're not spending it, your VCs and investors are yelling at you, what are you doing? Not deploying the investment fast enough, right?
Yeah.
And we did not have that problem because we were growing with our own customer revenue. So the whole team, the whole DNA of the company is every dollar we spend, what's the impact? Is it actually necessary? Are we losing more money than there are a lot of marketing, startup marketing land where they're like, oh, I grow 100% and 200% and 1,000%. And their ROI was less than 1. Yeah. And like, it's, definitely a lot easier to spend $3 to make $1, of course.
Yeah.
So we didn't really mean to choose it the hard way on purpose.
Sure.
This is just the resources that we had. And we really didn't want this like growth for the sake of growth. Right?
Yeah.
We wanted to have this thoughtful addition to the team. And we wanted to be very mindful of how the team and the culture is evolving as we grow.
Yeah.
So that kind of limited the way we stand, the way we add people, everything that we do kind of grow from there. It's like, is this sustainable? Is this sensible?
Yeah. And what do you think the biggest, I don't want to say waste of capital, but I guess the most inappropriate way to use capital that most founders use? What are some things that they're not necessarily, or that they're investing too much money into that you've seen founders make that mistake?
I think you're kind of seeing the market correction now, right?
Yeah.
I think founders tend to have this kind of competitiveness with headcounts, right? If you go and talk to a new founder or you're at a startup event, they're like, oh, how big is your company? Well, first, how much did they raise? Or like, how much did you raise? And who did you raise it from? And usually my answer is like, right? And then and then they're like, oh, how big is your team? And I'll be like, I don't know. We have we grown very slowly, right? We only added when we really needed to. So I think there's this like default assumption of like, if your company has more people as a founder, you're more successful.
Mm-hmm.
And there was less talk about like, how much revenue did you make, right?
Right.
And is that revenue profitable? How much margin do you have? Like, how productive are you? Those conversations were not common.
Yeah.
Right. Now people are starting to think about, like every employee, every headcount that you had, is that a net positive or net negative to the company? They weren't thinking about it because I think both press, both VCs, just like typical startup environment, people will focus on the round measure of success.
Yeah.
I think they respect a founder who raised 10 million more than the founder who has a 10 million ARR.
Yeah.
Even though having 10 million ARR is a lot more valuable to the company and the shareholders, right?
Yeah. One founder said that VCs will often invest in like users and activity, and private equity are the companies that will buy or invest in startups with an actual profitable ARR. And I thought that was such an interesting, I guess, like juxtaposition, because we value this VC investment so much more than this other investment or other investment vehicles. But I mean, I'm in the same boat. The more employees that we have, the more stressed I get about how to manage and how to make sure people are busy versus enabling people, optimizing processes and making them really maximizing, not people's, I guess, energy or anything like that, but maximizing the amount of things that they can do with as little input as possible, which is a fascinating thing to me as a founder, because as you said, it's in line with what's most important, which is the profitability of the company.
Yeah.
I guess if everything goes well, what's the long-term vision for Boomerang?
I think we will continue to build the things that we would like the world to have, right? That is the fundamental point of Boomerang, is to help people have extra time for things that matter in their lives.
Yeah.
So we have customers in various segments of the industry, and everything that they do, we are making sure that they will have more mental energy by offloading all their things that they have to keep track of, making so that things are more efficient for them. So if you're an astronaut, you have time to actually go design your spaceship. And if you're an architect, you have time to design your masterpiece. But like all the things that we think as busy work, they still need to happen, right?
Sure.
The collaboration, the communication. How do we make it so that people can do it without so much like energy and time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I always like the next question, and I'm going to hit you with some rapid fire questions. I call them my founder FAQs. And so let's see where we get. So first question is, what's hard about your day?
What's hard about my day is knowing what to be done immediately. So prioritization is every founder's problem. We have so many things to do, and knowing this must be done today and what can wait, and actually making time for longer term, right? The Eisenhower matrix, urgent versus important, the non-urgent important things, getting breathing room and really getting yourself into that flow state of creating and making things that have a longer term impact.
Yeah.
That's hard.
Yeah. Yeah. I read something impressive on your profile, which was that the majority of your team was actually women, and especially a significant portion, if not, I think close to half, was on the engineering team as well. And I think companies are always so challenged with hiring diversity, just meaning having actual representation on their team of reality, which is how I take it. But how do you go through that hiring process, and for founders who are struggling with hiring diverse or hiring a diverse team with different perspectives, backgrounds, experience that all can contribute, what advice would you give them, and what made you successful in your hiring process that allowed you to get to, I think, a more representative team? I don't want to say diverse, but I just think there's too much connotation with that word, but I think a more representative team is a little bit more accurate.
Okay, so I think I'll answer your first questions is how do we do it? We reverse engineer the hiring process. So a lot of our hiring process try to look for the actual evidence of doing the work rather than whether you are more confident and good at interview, right? There are a lot of tech hiring process that really focus on people who are confident with the bravado and they just have present well, right? And we try to make this interview process really beneficial and like really shine the spotlight on how you would actually do the work and figure out how would an introvert feel about this interview process,
right? And
kind of design around that. So a lot of our interview process, we don't have whiteboard coding questions. We try to actually, like, one tech interview question that we have is literally our CTO walking you through our code base.
Yeah.
And people are like, how is that an interview? And we're like, you will see what they ask, what they focus on, what type of personality and collaborativeness they have just by walking them through our existing code base.
Yeah.
We do pair programming. We actually have a problem and write the solution with them together.
Yeah.
So a lot of our interview process are thinking about what do you need to do this function. So if it's marketing, we figured out what is the exercise that we are going to do. We pay the candidate to do the exercise if it's a take home. And then we just treat them as our coworker. Yeah. And we try to simulate the day in the life of. So they come in and we're like, hey, we have this project brief. Let's talk about how we're going to execute it. Yeah. And then basically go through and just pretend they are a coworker for a day. Wow. That's how we were able to have the diversity that we have. Speaking of that, that was pre-pandemic. We don't have the same ratio anymore. There was some changes and new hire over time. So we will get back there. I believe that. We haven't hired that much recently. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, with markets fluctuating and the challenges of hiring, but it's awesome to hear about, the sharing the code base was interesting because I myself am like, oh, what is the engagement? But you can probably imagine it, and thinking through it now, it's about the communication piece and what they're asking you and how they're asking questions. Yeah. And what they're diving into. And maybe even like, oh, why do you use this versus this other technology or this other infrastructure? That's way more illuminating than asking questions and evaluating answers, because answers are just hard to quantify if there's not, or qualify if there's not something you can quantify, right? You can't measure it. That's so fascinating. Back to the FAQ. I love that point you made. If you were to wave a magic wand, what's one thing you'd wish for your company to have right now?
Probably a sales team. We've been getting to that point. So we don't know how to do enterprise sales because we grew all our revenue, and throughout company history, we're all direct to like self-serve customers. And we have some enterprise customer that grown themselves from individual user, growing into team, growing into full company. But we don't have a enterprise sales process.
Yeah.
So I'm learning myself right now. So yeah, if that's just wave a magic wand and I have a functional, excellent sales team already built tomorrow, that would be great.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. What do you do as a founder to decompress or re-energize yourself at going through the ups and downs of being a founder, running a startup and dealing with the external pressures? What do you do to recharge?
I have a daily routines that we've been designed and tweaked over the years to make sure that I'm functional and sane, mostly.
Yeah.
In the morning, I actually do 20, 30 minutes of yoga before I start my workday. And that just like really get me both center, make sure my breathing and everything is actually to not so stressed out before you even start the day. I don't check my email before until I finish my yoga and like handle the hard things.
Yeah.
The other part is my founder and husband, Alex, and I take a walk every day at lunch. We go around the neighborhood. And we have a very green, like we're in the hills of Berkeley. So
love that.
Just seeing nature and having that dose of being out in the nature. And like, regardless of what the weather is, if it's raining, well, it's California, so it just sometimes we rain.
Yeah.
It rains, but most of the time it's not that hard. But like, regardless of what the weather is, we go have our daily walk to just kind of decompress, look at the trees, and just kind of be out there. And it's kind of our like founder tradition. Every time we have to make any major decision or strategic decision, all three co-founders, I have another co-founder, Mike, we will go out for walks and just talk through things.
Yeah.
And that's been very helpful. Like it's different from like sitting in a meeting room or even on Zoom where you're trying to talk through these long-term things that you don't know if it's the right decision or wrong decision.
Yeah.
It's really helped to put yourself in nature and just be moving.
Yeah. Another founder mentioned a similar point where he's like, before I do anything, I go outside for at least 15 minutes a day. And it really kind of helped them recapture the energy but also it almost restarts the mechanisms in your mind to be able to think either it's critically or with a fresh mindset. I always like to ask this question to kind of not only get selfish advice for myself, but also for our audience, whether it's early in your career or now, what books or people have influenced you the most?
I think a lot of, I don't know, I've read a lot, so it's hard for me to pick. Every book has influenced me in some way, right? Mm-hmm. Do you want advice for what founder should read?
No, whatever inspires you.
So I love Influence by Cialdini. It's really helpful for thinking through like just people's motivations and how to be persuasive. Because as founder, our job is to convince people of one thing or another all day long, whether customer, employee, new hire, partner, every investors, everything that we do is to be persuasive.
Yeah.
Influence has been like basically a tool that I reread every 2 to 3 years to kind of refresh my memory. I make sure that my new hires and anybody who is in any kinds of customer facing communication role, product, all of them, I make sure they read it.
Yeah.
What else? There's a very simple UX book called Don't Make Me Think. It's like not that big. It's maybe 180 pages or so.
Uh-huh.
And I think you don't have to be a user experience designer to make lives easier for all your users and customers.
Yeah.
And I really highly recommend it. Like it's kind of a once you read it thing to kind of stick with you.
Yeah.
You can kind of apply the fundamentals everywhere. What else? I don't know.
Yeah.
I read too much and I sometimes can't remember like what are all the. And then the other part of my inspiration is from research papers. So I actually love reading what people are trying out, experimenting in terms of both productivity, happiness, well-being. And there are lots of awesome researchers out there working on this stuff. And I love actually reading the research papers.
I love that. I love always a researcher at heart, always a scientist at heart. I love that. I feel like the research papers deal with a different depth and I think what I like about it is the reflection on the research the most. It's the thing they didn't consider or that they didn't test for or that they could have that it really, I guess for me at least, incites some curiosity.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Mo, I know we're at the end of this show here and I want to make sure you get a chance to give us your plug. Where can we find you? Where can we support? Where can we download Boomerang? Give us your LinkedIn, your websites, everything to be a part of Boomerang and what you're doing.
Yeah, is where you can find all our products. I'm pretty easy to find on both LinkedIn and Twitter. My full name, AYEMOAH, is my handle on both. I think that's about it.
Amazing. Well, Mo, it's been such a pleasure having you on the show and going through your founder journey and the success you've had over such long years. And I love the thought about the thoughtfulness behind how you spend your money and how you price and how you deal with your customers. I think a lot of founders, especially now with external pressures of, whether it's macroeconomics or not, can learn a lot from how you've been doing it for so long undercover. And it's impressive to see. And I really hope you enjoyed yourself. And thank you again for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.